You're listening to the Battle Buddies podcast.
So for me, when I think about what I'm personally trying to do, here's what I wrote in 2020, and I haven't updated it yet, but I need to, because I can't live by this purpose statement. It made me miserable, and I'll explain that in a second. So I change lives by empowering people through opening their minds to truth and freeing them from that which bonds them. So this, you can hear echoes of the Max Academy in there. So, I'm trying to empower people. Opening their minds is education, freeing them is all about inspiring them, things like that. So I feel like ignorance keeps us in bondage, and I want to fight ignorance wherever I go. I want to educate people. And I think that made me a crusader, and I regret trying to be a crusader. I tried with kindness and respect, out of love, to correct people when they said things that were terrible. They said some pretty awful things during the beginning of the pandemic on mostly social media, which is the only place where I could interact with people because we were all locked down. And so people would say awful things, and I would try gently to correct them. And they weren't having it, because when you break into someone's echo chamber and try to tear it down, you will be met with resistance, as if you were a foreign invader crossing the border into their land and trying to set your flag upon their property. I get the reflex, but at the same time, shouldn't we all welcome correction from those we trust, from those that have spoken truth into our life before, from those that we respect? And I feel like everybody I talked to forgot that they were talking to me, someone who actually cares about them. And they started treating me like a criminal. And that was very strange. It was a very strange feeling, and it made me very miserable. So I think social media is partially to blame for that. It's not a rich context conversation.
Social media is, at the risk of sounding like a boomer, social media is definitely a wall, because you have some level of anonymity, whether your profile is mentioned or not. I think that people miss that. I think that's also why people are oftentimes less polite talking to us on the phone as they are in person, because when you have that, once again, that connection, back to where we kind of started, when you have that connection, you're less likely to want to put this person down or beat them out or anything like that.
Absolutely.
Unless they're trying to do it to you, which then triggers your defense mechanism, right? And this is something that I've had to think about sort of along the same lines. I've definitely had to think about that for myself, the idea of educating people. They don't always take that kindly. No. Especially when, if you're working with people who are your peers. It's a scary thing, first of all. At least it is for me sometimes, trying to say, hey, you're doing this wrongly, so here's how you fix it. I think a lot of it for me came down to, before I do that with you, I'm going to make you love me so much that I could tell you that you are the worst human being, and you'd go, okay. That's one of the things that's helped me, I suppose.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, getting people to care about you. I know we talked about this before. Getting people to like you. And I remember telling this to some of our students, or some of our junior instructors, saying, you need to get the kids to like you, and them going, what does that mean? If they don't like you, why are they going to listen to you?
Right.
You're not going to listen to the musings of a random stranger that gives you advice. But if there's someone you trust, hopefully, you're going to listen to them a lot more.
Right, and that tends to be what they remember. They won't remember what you taught them. They remember how you make them feel, And that's, I guess that's a quote from somebody. I don't know where it's from right now, but it's really important that we remember the feelings do matter. Yeah. And you're talking about the emotional bank account. I invest in people. I put a lot of deposits in the emotional bank before I take a withdrawal. And maybe that's where I went wrong in my social media crusade, which I ended. By the way, just the fallout from that has been ridiculous. Like, for a while, I got some support from people privately. They would send me private messages saying, hey, I appreciate that you're trying to correct some of the faults that you see present. And I appreciate how you're doing it, and I support you, and good job. It gives me hope in mankind. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, great. That's kind of what I'm trying to do. I'm doing it for them more than I'm doing it for the ignorant people, I guess. But people did not take this well. And like I said, it just made me miserable. So I should have invested more in trying to build them up. And I should have asked them more questions, and I should have not just tossed pearls to swine.
Yeah.
Not to call them such a derogatory term as swine, but this is essentially a proverb, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you toss your pearls to swine, they'll trample them under feet. You have to wait to give your wisdom until people are ready to hear it. It doesn't mean that they're swine when they're not ready to hear it. It just means that they won't accept it. They don't value it. I wish I hadn't wasted so much time.
Yeah. And there's another proverb that says, "Don't reprove a fool, or he will hate you.
Yeah.
Reprove a wise man, and he will love you."
Yeah.
If you reprove someone who doesn't care and is I hate to say this, but purposefully ignorant.
Yeah.
There are people out there who are purposefully ignorant.
Yes.
And you might not think yourself purposefully ignorant. You should look at yourself and say, "Am I purposefully ignorant? Am I stagnant in what I'm thinking?" But those are the people who usually will lash out first, because their ignorance is being challenged, right? I think that's, though, a different level of ignorance. And I know I've talked to my pastor about this when we went through Proverbs, and Proverbs is one of my favorite books of the Bible, because I think that trying to speak to people about the Bible oftentimes can turn them off.
Sure.
And of course, that's part of my goals, one of my goals. But trying to tell people just straight up of the Bible will oftentimes turn them off to it. But like 2 Timothy says, if you give them wisdom, that leads to salvation, because true wisdom leads to that. And so I think part of my goal is to, especially for not just spirituality, but for everyday life, wisdom is so important. And
Yes.
it's so vital for your success, because if you don't seek it, you go into this place of, it's sort of like a journey. Proverb pictures it. You start out as the ignoramus, the stupid, the nobody, or the guy who knows nothing.
I haven't
right?
heard that word in a while.
Yeah. And you go from that, and you're faced with two choices. You have the choice of wisdom, and wisdom is, she's calling to you, and you have the choice of foolery, or as it puts it sometimes, the scoffer, which is the person who not only is set in their foolishness, but also beats other people down with it, and tells people that they too should be ignorant like me. You can go either direction, and there are ways that intersect, I would say, between the two of them, but you can end up as a wise person, or you can end up as a not wise person. So
I try to fight ignorance on every front, and so hearing you talk about how you care about people following the right path and leading to the path of wisdom in their life, that's good. It makes me feel like, I know I'm not the sole person responsible for your development and your wisdom, but it makes me happy to see that we're on the same page with that. You mentioned before talking about sharing Bible with people, and Bible passages are a hard thing to share nowadays. We're living in a different stage of society. Like, people don't necessarily believe in truth. Epistemology is something that's fascinating to me. It's like, does truth exist? What does it mean to be true? What's real knowledge? All of that is in question right now in society, and I think people don't want to hear truth. They want to hear their truth, and that's it's a subtle difference, but it's such an evil. I believe in objective truth. And when people say, well, that's your truth, it's true to you, it's not true to me, that drives me absolutely crazy, because there has to be real truth. Like, I believe in God, and that's not my truth, that's truth. Like, I believe God exists, and I have evidence that he does. Good philosophical arguments, good arguments based upon science even, which are not developed by me, they're developed by apologists. And so these things, I think, lead to an objective truth that God exists, but of course it does require some faith. But it requires some faith to believe opposite as well. It requires some faith to believe that the universe was created from nothing. Like, that's what science has led us to. The universe came from nothing. Oh, nothing with no power at all whatsoever? Okay, that's interesting. How? They go, I don't know. And I go, that's faith.
Created.
Yeah. That's faith. And it's so weird to me. But if I want to share the Bible with people, Gabe, I don't shove it down their throat because they're not ready to hear it. Instead, what I do is I will share with them truths from Scripture, and I will allow them to do what they will with it.
Yes.
And if they want to discuss it further, let's discuss it further. But when I present that truth, I don't present it as, oh, well, this could be true. Instead, it's like, no, I have found that there are fools in the world, and a fool in his folly is hard to correct. And this is a principle that comes from Proverbs.
Yeah.
I find that when people are struggling, if I share the passage I shared earlier, consider it pure joy when you face trials of many kinds, like, they don't always understand that. But sometimes they're ready to hear it if I've invested enough in their life beforehand. It's all about just sharing it when they're ready to hear it. Mm-hmm. If you're the type of Christian that goes, you will hear the truth whether you like it or not, you're going to face resistance. And quite frankly, you should. Because think about what you're doing. As you share the gospel with people, you're telling them they need to change. Mm. And they don't want to.
Yeah, you haven't built the rapport yet.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, even if you have built rapport, think about what that means. If you told somebody you love that their lifestyle was, okay, let's take a physical example. Their lifestyle was going to kill them because maybe they're obese and they live a stationary existence. I'm going to sit and not move. And you tell them this lifestyle is going to kill you. They don't like that. Yeah, that's true. They don't accept it because it means I've made mistakes. I must admit to my mistakes, and I must change. People don't want to do that. And that's how much more so with spiritual stuff, because it means maybe I have been at war with God, and maybe there are eternal consequences for that, and maybe I need to change and live a different life. Admitting that you have sin in your life is hard. It's hard for anyone. It's hard for Christians.
So much better for us to say, well, I'm a good person.
I'm a good person. Yeah.
That's my truth.
I just believe that as long as you're good, you don't need to change anything. God will accept you as you are. There's a half-truth there. God does accept you as you are, and he loves you too much to leave you there.
Yeah. I think that's also emulating his example. That should definitely be part of our mission, too.
Right.
It's not a loving thing to tell someone, yeah, you're okay where you are. It's not a loving thing for me to see a student doing a move incorrectly and say, you're doing a great job.
That's right.
That's unloving of me. That's me not putting their best needs first.
Right.
Now, it's also true that I should take that carefully, and there is an art to correction. But the right answer is not to do nothing.
Right.
And so I think that's important. I think one of the biggest ones for me, and this is back to showing the example that is Christ, right? One of the biggest ones for me has always been, I want people, and I hope this is somewhat evident, I want people to see me as someone who is joyful. I want to be someone who's joyful. Because if I am joyful, first of all, great byproduct is other people then can become joyful as well.
Yes.
And I can spread that joy to other people. And then also, people go, what is it about him that makes him so joyful?
Yes.
And if I can get people to start there, well, then we can have a conversation. And a lot of it stems from just a joy to do what you do. And I've been blessed to have the joy of my work and my faith that both work together.
Yeah. You have a joy aura, if that helps at all. It's contagious. People come around you and they enjoy being around you because I think people know you genuinely love them. You genuinely want what's best for them. And that's when you're at your best self, is when you're trying to get people to understand how much joy and love there is in life.
Yes. I'm glad to have a short memory too, because that means it's hard for me to hold any sort of grudge against anyone, because I always forget. I'm like, oh, what was that thing that happened again? I don't remember. It's probably not important.
Grudges are so useless.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish there are people that have grudges against me. I mean, I definitely I have guilt in that in some ways. Like, I've done some things wrong to push people away.
Same.
But they hold these grudges against me, and if you would just come and talk to me, we can work this out. I promise. Like we can be better together. We don't have to be separate. And I think some people want to be mad. What do you think, Gabe? Do you think some people want to be mad?
Well, first of all, I wanted to note the number one rule in pad work has changed my life a little bit, and that is don't silently resent your partner. So if they're holding the pad incorrectly, don't, oh man, this guy just sucks at holding.
Right.
You let them know. And so I think that, first of all, translates really well into our life, because if I have something deep against you and I just let it fester, there's a chance that it can start eating me up, and I don't even look at that person the same way.
That's right.
And so I think that's part of it. I do think that a lot of people want to be angry. Maybe this is kind of, forgive me kind of shooting from the hip.
Do it.
But I think part of it is possibly to do with, back to ignorance, is people want you to be the villain in the story because that means that they're the hero. And that could definitely be part of it. I don't know if that's all of it. That could definitely be a reason for people wanting to be angry. And this is coming from someone who, to be blunt, I do get angry. Not very often, to a large extent, and if I do, it's for a short amount of time. And I'm very thankful that I'm wired that way. And it's not my choice, really. That's just, I guess, the way I was raised, perhaps. But perhaps it is that people want to be their hero in their story, which I think there is some benefit to, but there's also a lot of danger in it. Being your hero means that you are always right and everyone else is always wrong. And that puts a lot of people as the villains of the story.
This is very similar to a philosophy I have, and that's people cannot be the villain in their own story. They just are incapable of understanding themselves that way. And so they try to be the hero. But I never had thought about what that means the opposite direction, that they will try to make you the villain if you disagree with their point of view or something. And there's some truth there. I don't think everyone does that, but there's a good number of people who, when I present a truth to them that they had not heard before, or at least a fact for them to consider, they will fight me instinctually because I am now their nemesis. I am the one that is fighting them. How dare you try to change my worldview? Which I respect in some ways. I want you to fight back if I'm trying to change your worldview and you actually believe that worldview. Yeah. You should fight back. That's normal. What you shouldn't do is go, you are now the enemy. Maybe you should go, I don't know if I like this thought. I will fight back against the thought instead of I will fight back against this person. It's silly because I would discuss, before I would discuss politics with some family members, and they didn't understand why I didn't support a certain president that is no longer president. That's all I'll say. And he was a candidate at the time. They didn't understand why I didn't support him. And so I gave them, reasons to consider, but I didn't present it in the most humble way. I presented it as, this is truth, this is fact. And they didn't like that at all. That was me fighting their worldview, and I became the enemy. It made fractures in the family that I didn't intend or didn't foresee because I was ignorant. And if I had just done it with a little more kindness, a little more respect for their point of view, maybe things could have been different. I don't know.
There is some level of us that we need to work on to present things in a more, I suppose, loving manner. But I think the biggest part of it is getting over that hero mentality.
Yeah.
I think that it's first of all, it's historically ignorant to say that you were the hero, you were always going to be the moral good, right? I look at something like Nazi Germany, where all the people did the same thing. They didn't stand up and take the moral high ground. They went with the flow and went with the culture. Why? Because it's easy. And of course there's some political, it's more complicated than just that. There's some political parts to it too. Hitler was very smart in how he indoctrinated people and where he went with that. But I still think that if you think that you will never be wrong, and you will never be evil, then you're a bigger danger to society.
Yes.
because if I can't grasp the fact that sometimes I get very angry,
Yeah.
if I can't get that into my mind and learn to cope with that,
Right.
I would say I'm less angry nowadays than I was a couple years ago.
Yeah.
If I can't get that into my mind, then all it's going to do is grow. All it's going to do is get stronger, because I don't think that's a weakness. If
Yeah.
I don't think that anger is a weakness of mine, I'm not going to try to fight the weakness that is anger.
Right.
And it's only going to get stronger, because like a muscle, the more I practice it, the stronger it gets.
That's right. It sounds like you have some humility about your limitations, and I mean, you could possibly be wrong. Can you imagine that?
I realize that.
I think we all want to fight that, but the truth is, we all have our moments of ignorance, and we all have our moments of lack of humility, with pride. And I think we know that pride goes before the fall. I mean, if you just would do something to remind yourself to stay humble, that would be great. Find yourself someone that will keep you humble, that will keep you on the straight and narrow. And my wife does that for me. I'll say some things sometimes, and I'll look at her face and realize that I said something that just sounded so arrogant, and I need to change how I'm, at least how I'm presenting that knowledge, rather than I could need to change exactly what I'm believing too. Like, she could look at that and go, "You're so arrogant that you think that that's the only right way." And I allow her to speak truth into my life this way, because we all need that. And I trust her, because I know she has what's best for me in mind. We all need someone like that, and we all just don't have somebody like that. And sometimes I've met some men that will not allow their spouses, or they will not allow their wives to speak to them that way. And I don't know if you know this, but I'm sure you know this. I'm pretty big on women's empowerment. Like, we empower young ladies in our dojo every day. I want them to speak their minds. I want them to be strong, because the world is hard and they need to be able to fight back against the things that are going to try to crush them. And some men I have met want a subservient woman in their life that is going to just yield to them. I don't understand that. I want a partner. I don't want a servant.
Yeah.
I want someone who will love me and respect me, but I also will return the love and respect. So I don't know. I don't mean to get too far off on a tangent, but that's one of those drums I beat often, because I don't understand it. And I know a lot of people, like, especially in the church, there's gender roles. Like, we have to have, like, women are subservient to men in some churches, and other churches they go, women are a partner to the man, and I think that that's a very interesting conversation to have. Anyway, not all that to say that I want people to feel empowered, and I want people to feel like they can talk back to arrogance and anger and frustration that they hear in their partners or in their friends even. Like, I want a friend that will look at me and go, "Hey, you're kind of acting like an idiot."
Those are the best friends, right?
Yeah, I need those friends. And I have Nick to do that for me a lot of times too. Nick has come to me many times where he's just like, "Hey, do you know the choices you're making are affecting all of us?" And I go, "Oh, yes, that's true. I will cool it. Thank you." I think we all need that. Do you have that, Gabe?
I hope. I really hope. I've definitely had to work on it. It's something that has come through training. But I think that one of the things that bothers me is, what you were talking about, subservient.
Yes.
Wanting that, I think, is a weakness.
I agree.
Because we had this conversation fairly recently. The idea of insecurity is made most visible through people who only show their strength.
Yes.
Weakness is made most visible through people who only show their strength. Because those are the people who aren't willing to let themselves be seen in some negative lights.
Right.
I hope to never do this, so I'll let everyone know that, yes, I struggle with things like pride, and I struggle with things like anger.
Yep.
And I have my own battles, because if you think that I'm perfect, right, then first of all, you're going to feel like I'm some sort of high man on the mountain who is unreachable and unattainable, but also it just means that I'm weak in that way. I remember listening to Jessica Rose Clark, who's a UFC fighter I follow, and she said that every time something happens in her life that is big and life-changing, she will let people know. And she tries to make that plain and visible to people so that they know, yeah, I struggle too. I'm not some perfect individual who never struggles. Because when you show, and I think it's a facade that people can see through too.
Oh yeah.
When people say, I never struggle, I'm always doing it exactly the way I'm supposed to. You say, nah, I can see through that.
Sure.
And it shows your insecurity and it shows your weakness. That's weakness, not being okay showing your flaws. Because strong men acknowledge their flaws, because no one is perfectly strong.
Right.
Strong people acknowledge their flaws and go from there to change them and turn those weaknesses into strengths. And if people accept those weaknesses or try to suppress them by saying, don't tell me about my weaknesses, well, that's you being the scoffer, you being the fool, and that's you staying weak.
It's so arrogant.
We don't train weak people here. We want competent individuals, both male and female, first of all. I think especially with females, I know for me that's been a sort of off of what you said, empowering them to be competent in a dangerous world, and teaching them things that give them confidence. When I'm meeting with some of my girls, I will give them competent structures and show them ways to be more confident in themselves, or give them drills even, or tasks, or things that help them to become more competent and confident in themselves. Become more confident in themselves, because if they feel that, then the world becomes a little bit less scary to them. Right? And they can take on a little bit more of it and are more comfortable being assertive, right? And teaching them assertiveness is, I think, equally important. The ability to say no. The ability to stand up for yourself or stand up for other people.
I love that.
That is, I think, super important, especially with women, is important because they might not have that. Statistically speaking, it is more of a masculine trait to be assertive, just from a statistical standpoint.
That's how our society looks at assertiveness. Yes, is that's a man thing, and when women start asserting themselves, they have nasty words that are thrown at them.
That's definitely true. Yeah, and I think part of it is, people are be polite first of all, but people are going to be upset when you're assertive because, well, once again, that's you breaking their status quo.
That's right. Breaking that's not how I understand women to be. Why are you acting this way? Yeah. I despise when people try to fit other people in boxes. I hate it. So I don't know. I'm glad that you want to empower ladies too. I've seen you do it. And about empowerment, if you want to empower yourself, what I tell people all the time is just discover what you're capable of. And I've seen this happen in fitness a lot, but it happens in martial arts for sure. Once you realize what your body can do, it gives you confidence. It's very interesting. In martial arts, the reason for that, I think, is because you realize I can protect myself against danger, and I'm a very powerful person. In fact, I myself am dangerous in the wrong context. So I need to make sure I keep that under control. Once you discover that about yourself, it changes you. You're a different person. You're a stronger person. You're a better version of yourself, in my opinion. Same thing happens in fitness. I've seen people who start losing weight and all of a sudden their confidence is way up. And it might be because they feel more attractive or something like that, but it could just be that, wow, my body can do some amazing things. I can run a marathon and other people can't do that? That's amazing. Dear listener, I am not a marathon runner. I am a marathon dyer. I die on the attempt of a half marathon, so that is not me.
Have you done a half marathon?
The most I have run in one day was when I did a really big Spartan race. And I believe, I'm sure someone's going to look this up and correct me, I believe it was 8 miles. Okay. 8 miles in one day is the most I have done. Now, I rejoice and celebrate this because I am an asthmatic. And as an asthmatic, it's super hard for me to run. Yeah. It's very difficult. Yeah. So if I have a good 11-minute pace, 10-minute pace, oh my goodness, I'm burning it 10 minutes per mile. I'm doing good.
Yeah. Well, that's also on top of all the obstacles too. All the obstacles.
Yeah. That's why I like Spartan races, by the way, is it breaks up the run.
That's true. I definitely like my runs broken up too. Yeah. I get that. So last thing, and then we can go to our audience questions. I'm sure that's what everyone's here for.
Oh, I see.
The last one is just, in what ways is martial arts more than just punching or kicking? A lot of people see martial arts as a violent place to be. Why do you think it's so important for our culture and our society, especially in the 21st century, where it's a much more, I suppose, a little bit more of a physically peaceful society? Why do you think that martial arts is still important?
I'll push back a little bit on the more peaceful society. I think there's a lot of people who understand on both sides of the political spectrum that knowing how to fight and protect yourself is very important. And I've seen more of that lately. With that said, martial arts is always more than just striking things and hitting things and choking people and all that stuff, which all that is, it's a part of what we do, but it's a vehicle. Martial arts is a vehicle of self-discovery. I realize what I'm capable of. We talked about this a little bit earlier. I realize what I'm capable of when I watch my fist collide with one of these heavy punching bags, or when, for me particularly, once I realized that I could break, I think, what was the record, 7 bricks. I broke 7 bricks, and I was just like, this is something that a small, at the time, like 128-pound person, this is something hard that I can do. What does that say about me and what I'm capable of? It says a lot to me. When I realize that I don't have to fear, because if somebody were to pick their fists up to try to force their will upon me, I would know what to do. That's not a weapon that can be used against me easily. When I realize that even if you pull an actual weapon on me, if you pull a gun or a knife and you're within range, I can do a good deal of damage to you, and you might not cause as much damage to me. Once I realize that, I change. I'm a different person. I'm a person that understands that fear, while it is important and is real, doesn't define me. Fear doesn't define me. And I love that. And I love watching a kid discover that. And I love watching an adult discover that. I love watching people realize, I don't need to be scared anymore. I can do damage too. And because I can do damage, I am dangerous. And because I am dangerous, I can walk in peace. And you can't walk in peace if you don't know how to go to war. That is my opinion, and I'm pretty sure I'm right about it. But, of course, new evidence could change my mind.
Oh, I'm pretty sure, too. So
yeah.
We'll both be wrong together if it's not the case. I think it's also true that with that, a little bit back to the whole, I suppose, differences in how the sexes look at danger or fear.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of females who come into here, a lot of the ladies will come in a lot more intimidated usually than some of the men.
You're talking like if they go into Krav or something like that?
Well, also a lot of the teenagers.
Oh, yes.
Because especially then, that's when the young teenagers are all full of themselves, right? And so sometimes it's a little easier for them, but it's always cool to watch a scared, shy, young female turn into a butt kicker.
Yes.
Right? One of the coolest things to see, in my opinion at least. I think that it's cool because you see that progression, right? It's one of the things that we as coaches, we as instructors strive for, is to see our students succeed, and I think that's one of the pinnacles of success, is seeing someone go from absolutely terrified to very courageous.
It's one of the things that keeps me going.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at some of our very young black belts, and I remember where they were. And I remember where they were before they started doing their big tests for brown and black belts, so their crew tests. They were different, and they are passionate about life now, and maybe they were before, but I couldn't see it.
Yes.
They've really opened up, and they've really they move different. They fight. They walk different. There's an aura around them that's different, and I don't mean that like energy aura. I just mean like you present yourself to society differently when you realize that you're not an easy victim.
Yes. One of the things Coach Katie said, which I loved, and it's sort of silly, but she said that, we're not immortal. We're human beings.
That's right.
We're like everyone else. It's just we're a lot harder to kill.
That's right. We're a lot harder to kill. I love that. gosh, she's got some pearls of wisdom.
Yeah. One of my favorite things in martial arts to see is that it's almost like an even playing field at that point when you see the ladies start catching up with the guys, right?
Yeah.
Who maybe start out stronger physically, but then they get that fire as well and that passion, and they can keep up too. There are a lot of ladies in these classes. They're hitting harder than the guys now.
Yeah.
And so
you mentioned that when some of the women have come in here have been intimidated a little bit at the beginning. Nowadays I always look at that and I go, you came in and you chose to be here.
Yeah.
How brave was that act?
That was courageous alone.
Yeah, that was a brave act. And because you did that act, I know you will do well. It's just, I believe in them at that moment, sometimes more than they believe in themselves. And we all need that. And that's not anymore. That's not just the ladies. That is the guys too, for sure. Society has expectations still about men and women. Men act a certain way, women act a certain way. And, more and more as the time goes on in my life, I realize that a lot of that is just it's a social construct. It's baloney. It doesn't have any real truth to it. Like, I talk about masculine and feminine, but I've met plenty of masculine women and plenty of feminine men, and all of them need to know how to fight.
Yeah. And all of them need that confidence, I think.
They all need the confidence, and they all are people that are valued. They're all people that I respect, and they're all people made in the image of God that need to be loved. I never understand when people hate somebody just because they are a certain way or they fit into a certain subculture that they don't. Why don't we just love them? I don't know. I feel like we need more love in this world.
Yeah. So do you think that martial arts, this is something that I hold to, do you think that martial arts is sort of a creator of equality in some ways? Because when you're here, you're going to work just as hard as everyone else. And regardless of who you are, if you want to learn, you got to put in the work.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, it is an equalizer, for sure. I'm realistic. I'm pragmatic. I hope you know that. Like I can think of the primary moment that I was more pragmatic than everyone else was, and I said, science says, based upon research, that women don't have the same upper body strength that men do, and are not capable of the same things. And I base that upon evidence, like push-ups, for example. They might be more limited for some women than for men in general. And I got such pushback on that. I said, look, we don't have to have a 500 push-up standard for our black belts that are girls, because I feel like it's too much, because scientifically they seem to not have the same output. And what happened is the ladies in the facility they mutinied. They said, no, this is not okay. I do not accept, and I'm going to meet the same standard.
Oh, man.
And that's beautiful. And at the same time, I'm just like, well, but there are still gender differences.
Yeah.
Like, it does matter that a body has a feminine frame as opposed to a masculine one, because that they're capable of producing less power in some scenarios. But what I love is when a woman looks at that and goes, then I'm going to limit the amount of difference there is between me and a man. Wonderful. That's best case scenario. Let's do that. Let's limit that. Let's make you stronger than most men. And that's exactly what we do.
Yes.
And I love that. They consistently surprise me with what they're capable of, the women who come through our facility, for sure. Not because I don't believe in them, but because they have so much, what's the word I'm looking for? So much grit.
Yes.
They have so much tenacity. They hold on to that goal and they go after. I'm continually impressed with who comes through here.
There you go. All right, well, we covered a lot of stuff. Obviously, we could talk for another 5 hours, but why don't we go ahead and go on, because we have a very eventful audience question list.
Yes.
So we'll go through these a little bit, and you can talk as much as you want on each one. So the first question is, what do you see as the next goal for yourself and next milestone for the business?
So the next milestone for the business is recovery from the damage the pandemic has dealt to the business. And so I would like us to reach a goal of reacquiring 300 members. We had 300 plus before the pandemic hit. And we've whittled down to somewhere around 200, which this is not uncommon for people in this industry during this time. What is odd is that our county has the vaccine mandate rule where you must be vaccinated and you must prove your vaccination just to get into the gym, and that's problematic. So I'd like to see the county rescind that rule so we can, reacquire new members. Props to all my friends in the martial arts industry who, a lot of them in 2021 made this the best year that they have ever had. And my envy abounds also, but I try to keep it in check. Like, yeah, good for you that you had the best year. I hate you a little bit, but also I'm really super proud of them and happy for them. Like, that's genuine. I would like us to have a really, really good 2022 and get a lot of new clients, not because I need the numbers, because I want society to feel what we do. I look at the number of people who are members and I look at that as success because I realize we're influencing a lot of people. That's what I want. Yeah. So that's the business goal for 2022, even though realistically I don't think 100 new members in 2022 is possible. We'll see. Yes, I think that was the moon shoot I put for you guys, is that let's get 100 new members. I would be happy if we got 50. That would be amazing. The next goal for myself, I have many, many goals in 2022. I missed a Krav Maga certification I need to do. I have a martial arts test I need to do. So Nick did the Satori Ryu test. I have the same one I need to do this year. So a lot of certifications and tests are coming up for me. I have a more, I guess, like an indirect goal. I want to relax more. And so that's something that I have to set aside time to do in the next year. I'm going on vacation to start 2022, which is cool. I would like to do more fun things. I want to be a fun person again. I want to have more joy in my life, like Gabe. I want to be like Gabe. So yeah, that's one of my personal goals for myself.
Next question. And this is an interesting one. We talked about this a little bit, but how does martial arts coincide with your spiritual life? Right.
A lot of Christians understand self-defense in a weird way. Like, there's a pacifist vein running through a lot of Christianity, and I thought that was really interesting to hear some pushback early in my life. I was maybe your age, and I shared with the pastor what I do, and the pastor said, how do you reconcile that with Scripture? I was like, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, what about turning the other cheek? And I was young, and I had not really considered it. But as I've gotten older, I think about that, and I go, well, turning the other cheek. This is Jesus talking about, if somebody, if somebody slaps you on one cheek, turn to him the other also. Let him slap you on that side too. And I thought about that, and I thought, that's an insult. That's not an attack. It doesn't say, let somebody break your face. It doesn't say, let somebody choke you. I think God understands that we have to, fight back when somebody's trying to kill us. I'm pretty sure preservation of life is high on his list of priorities. So I look at passages like, it's in Nehemiah, where he talks about they're rebuilding, I think, the wall around their city, around Jerusalem. And he tells them, rebuild with one hand and hold your sword in the other. Fight for your children and for your wives. Fight for your city. And that speaks to me deeply. We definitely are told to protect ourselves from people who are trying to do us great harm and from evil in the world. Protect others from evil in the world. I don't see a problem with martial arts and Christianity coinciding. I don't. What I see a problem with is when somebody has a toxic masculinity that's wrapped up in it, where they're trying to teach men to be very macho, and they think that that's a biblical thing, that God wants men to be a certain way, and the way that they describe to me seems really bad. I don't think it's helpful. Yeah, I don't know if I can expand on that right now. I'd have to find some examples, but I've met some men who are Christians and martial artists martial artists, and they teach some real bad things,
Yeah.
and I don't like that.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I think a lot of the biblical heroes too were definitely, they were not all their strengths. There's
Sure.
a lot of their weaknesses and vulnerabilities put on display. I remember reading recently Jehoshaphat when
Yeah.
he got besieged by the Assyrians led by Sennacherib, and he prayed a prayer that was very interesting because it was essentially stating that he was fully reliant. It's
Yeah.
not a very macho thing to say,
Right.
that I'm completely defenseless and completely helpless here.
Right.
Because what he was saying was, this army that I'm against is bigger than mine. This
Yeah.
military fighting force is stronger than mine.
That's right.
And so I can't do this alone. I need help. And that's a strength in my
Love
opinion.
that,
That's a
yeah.
vulnerability. That's a strength, because recognizing your own weaknesses, right? Back to where we were before.
Right.
Recognizing your weaknesses is a strength, not a weakness.
gosh, Gabe, I'm just so proud of you. Like,
Thank you.
just so you know, like the vulnerability aspect is something that is not appreciated by every corner of America, even let alone the world at large. Like, I've met some people, business owners, who they don't respect a vulnerable person. Like, why would you share that piece of information? You need to present strength, and only strength is respected. And I look at that and I go, no, you can work that way, sure, but that's not healthy. If you want healthy people, they need to be able to admit where they fall short. And I love the word picture of Jehoshaphat or Jehoshaphat. I don't know how to say it, right? I don't know how to say it. Anyway, so he rolls the scroll out. He prostrates himself before God in front of that scroll, and with the scroll before him. And I think that's such a beautiful picture. Like, he's on his knees. His face is on the floor. Because what else can we do in the face of an impossible enemy other than just go, I don't have the strength to handle this. I need help. Wow. Can you imagine society that understands it needs help? Gosh.
Yeah.
We all need help. I'm not above this.
Yes. There's also a level of, I think, caution, though. This is on the flip side. I
Yes, sir.
definitely believe vulnerability to be a very important piece of your life, of everyone's
Yes.
lives. There's also a level of caution in this take,
Yes.
because, like anything, it can be used against you.
Sure.
And so, showing your weak. This is where I deviate from most people who say vulnerability should be at all fronts in your life. I don't believe that at all. I think that vulnerability is paramount
Yes.
with people you trust.
Right.
Because first of all, people don't appreciate it. If I go to everybody and tell them how horrible my life is right now, they might not necessarily, okay, great, whatever. Can I go back to my Starbucks drink now? But also on top of that, and I've heard some commentators talk about this, it's a selfish thing sometimes too, because
Yes.
you can get to a point where all you're thinking about is you. I remember a commentator I was listening to, he talked about a story about him and his wife, and he was going through some rough parts in his life, and there was something that, long story short, he saw something that really troubled him, and he went back to his wife, and his first response was going to be, oh man, here are all these horrible things that went on. But he said, that was the selfish thing to say, to blare my vulnerabilities. What I should do instead is say, how are you doing first? And
Right.
put the other person's need before you. Put
Absolutely.
the other person's needs before yours. And then, after you know that they're taken care of, heard, accounted for,
Right.
loved, then you can share your own.
Right.
But you want to be careful not to let your vulnerabilities become a selfish part of your life, because
agree.
everything can be used for good and everything can be used for evil, in my opinion.
I 100% agree with you, and I think there are times that vulnerability is just foolishness. For example, if you know someone is out to get you, either they're out to get you physically, or they broke into your house, right? And they have a gun. Like, this is not a moment where I'm being vulnerable. Like, you are so You are coming at a time that my family is falling apart, and I'm just, we're destitute, and like I'm not going to reveal my vulnerabilities to some assailant.
Hey, you're getting kicked in the balls.
Yeah, he's getting a broken face. He gets a one-way trip to the ER. That's what he gets because he broke into my house. And to those that can handle that situation with vulnerability and de-escalate it, wow, like you are impressive. You are turning the other cheek to a new extreme.
Yeah.
I am not you. I cannot do this.
Yeah.
But I think that people who are out to get you because they hate you, right? Don't be vulnerable to them. That's not a good idea. Maybe it'll de-escalate their hate for you, but probably not. Like there are some people in my life that I know they hate me. Absolutely, they have told me, they have shown me, and they continue to prove it. With that person, I'm not going to seek him out and try to tell him what I'm struggling with right now. No. He gets nothing. I've tried to be vulnerable with these types of people in the past. Once they cross a certain threshold, you cannot be vulnerable anymore. You have to wall them off, unfortunately. I don't know what else to do with them.
Yeah. Surrounding yourself with people who want the best for you.
Right. Those are the ones that I'm vulnerable with.
Yeah. The next couple of questions are rather comedic, and we'll lightning fast them. So first one. Who's your favorite employee besides me?
The favorite employee I've ever had is this one's easy. I love all my children equally, and I have no favorites.
Oh, okay.
That's where I'm going with that one, Gabe.
That's perfect. It's a wise move. What are your thoughts on NFTs? Also, can you define NFTs?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. An NFT is a non-fungible token. A non-fungible token is where I own something, and it's digital.
Oh.
Think of like digital art, for example. Let's say Nick made this wonderful digital painting that only exists in the digital world. It doesn't exist in the real world. Mm-hmm. I don't own any real thing except I own the rights to that digital thing. I suppose I could try to monetize that by enforcing my copyright when you try to put it on your website. But that seems impossible, and it's new, and so therefore, good luck getting a lawyer to prove this. And I'm sure there's people who know way more about this who are gonna clap back and go, no. NFTs are the future, and this is an old man speaking, and I totally get that I probably don't know enough about this.
Both of our boomerness is today.
But from my understanding of NFTs, it's a new technology, and they are silly right now because you can't do anything with it. You can just say you own it. But hey, maybe that's enough. Maybe some people just want to own it. I want the digital rights to.
I want to have something.
Yeah.
What makes boba so good?
Some people hate boba because it's chewy. I love boba. I think it's the only version of tapioca that's tolerable.
All right, fair. I'm not a fan, but do giraffes intimidate you?
They're really tall, and that worries me because I'm very short. That's the conclusion of my thoughts about giraffes.
Have you ever fed giraffes?
Yes.
Oh, it's fun.
They have really long tongues.
They have really long tongues.
It's
and
disgusting.
Really
It's really long necks. Yeah.
How confident are you that there will be unicorns in heaven?
I am fairly confident there will be no unicorns in heaven.
See, here's something. Okay, this is super random, but I was talking with my sister, and she said something that blew me away.
Okay.
What is more believable to you?
Yeah.
That there is a horse,
Right.
spike on its head,
Right.
like a rhinoceros. There's a horse with a spike on his head.
Yeah.
Or that there is a horse with a I don't know how long, like 20, 30 foot tall neck. Which of those, if you knew nothing, if you were an alien coming into our society,
Right.
which of those would you say, oh, that one makes more sense?
Yeah. So for the listener, he's alluding to giraffes being horses, and that shows that he's just not.
It was a joke. So the Chuck Norris joke goes like this. Chuck Norris once front kicked a horse in the face, and now we call it a giraffe.
Yes, I love it. Yeah, I think it is more believable there's a horse with a spike for sure. I heard once, how do you know God has a sense of humor? Well, have you ever seen, and then you can put whatever weird animal here. Have you ever seen a giraffe? Have you ever seen a platypus? Oh my gosh, God must have a sense of humor because he made a platypus.
Things or something.
Right, but he also has he also respects the platypus. You can tell because don't they have like claws and
Oh, yeah,
junk
they're-
and like
they're poison.
venom or
They're
something?
venomous,
Yeah,
yeah.
crazy.
They're crazy animals.
I love that.
It's so weird because they're such an anomaly. Like, you can
Yeah.
put so many animals into a box and you look at them and you're like, wait, what?
What box do you fit in?
Quite the sense.
And it's like, I'm a mammal. I don't know. I don't know about you.
You what?
You lay eggs, but there's milk. Oh my gosh. I guess you're a mammal. I guess.
All right, next one. What kind, and this is from your brother,
Yeah.
so you might need to give some context. What kind of fluttering creature could you beat in a
Oh
fight?
my gosh. So Nick knows that butterflies love me, and I'm a Disney princess in regard to butterflies. If I go to the butterfly exhibit at what was formerly called Marine World, Discovery Kingdom now?
I think
yeah. If I go to a butterfly exhibit, the butterflies will land on me. That will happen. And my immediate reaction is to slap at said butterfly, but they're beautiful. I don't
sad.
want to kill them. So I have to have so much self-control when I go through a butterfly exhibit as they land on me, and I have to try not to kill them. Meanwhile, my wife, who looks more like a Disney princess than I do, you might imagine,
That's fair.
she gets the cold shoulder from all the butterflies.
Man,
it's
that's
so sad.
And last question.
Yes.
And that's from me.
Yeah.
And that is, what can people do to get those gains?
To get those gains? Yeah, so it takes a lot of discipline. Discipline equals freedom, says
I thought it was
Jocko.
gonna be easy.
No, you've got to fight for it. I really found my stride, and my stride was that I don't think when I work out. I am told what to do, and I do it well. And because I can do that for long periods of time, I can get gains. The more I have to think about what comes next, the less I'm going to work, or the less long I will work, right? I'll work a shorter amount of time. So no thinking. Must go in ready to do. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. All right, well, we've talked about a lot of things.
Yes.
Once again, you guys, thank you for listening. If you guys have questions for the next episode, we'll be back to our normally scheduled program. Feel free to let me know if you have any other guests we should bring on. Sensei, thank you for coming on. I'll say it again because it's very true. None of this would be around if it wasn't for you. So thank you for doing all the stuff that you do, and I will see you later today, I guess.
Thanks, Gabe.